All right, welcome back to Siam Smoke Sessions. I am broadcasting straight to your dome from Chiang Mai, Thailand, Lana Kingdom, and my co-host, Siththa. How you
I
doing?
mean, I would say where I'm broadcasting from, but still no one's guessed it yet, so I'm gonna let that hang. So it's somewhere in England, guys. Robin Hood, remember that man? Think of that shit.
Okay, okay, good. Yeah, someone's gonna have to guess that. Let's see, which. Oh, by the way, let's kick it off with the secret question right off the bat. You ready for this trick secret question here?
I mean, I only got half of it right last week, so maybe I'll get it fully right this week.
Okay. What episode are we on for the Siam Smoke Sessions podcast?
Okay, I will get this one easy. Episode 4.
Okay, good. Well, that was not the secret question. That was a fake one.
Fuck.
But I did want to see if you're keeping track.
Hey, I'm getting there. I'm remembering to record. I'm reading the notes. I'm doing my shit, man.
All right, so that's good. You got that right. So this is the secret question. Now, you like to visit Bangkok, right? You like Bangkok as a city, right?
Bangkok's cool as shit. Of course I do.
Okay. And like we talked about last time, you talked about an hour about going to Bangkok and how much fun you had and all the dispensaries you went to. So I wanted to ask a Bangkok question this week to see how much you really know Bangkok.
Oh God, here we go.
Okay, so how many districts are there in Bangkok? Bonus, what? And do not Google search this, dude. Do not
Oh
Google
God.
search this, because I know if you do,
I know you
because
will. I'm
because the
scared.
bonus question is what is a district in Bangkok called? Go.
I mean, am I retarded to say soy? Is it
Yes.
okay? I know it's that. That's like the one word that I know for 100% certain is like I know geologically related.
That is the wrong answer.
Bury.
That is not
No.
correct.
See, I'm just naming off all the simple ones now. Shit. I don't know. There's the provinces are the bigger ones. Uh, God, I did read on a sign how many districts there are. Where was it? I think it was near the city pillar. Isn't it? Is it 50? Is it 50?
That is correct.
Okay. My God, I did it. I still don't know what they're called, but I just
Wow, I
remember
don't know
reading
where
a
you
sign
pulled
or a
that. I
number.
know I don't know where you pulled that out from. But
Okay, if
that
anyone's
is the
in
correct but that is the correct answer.
if anyone's in Bangkok, go to the city pillar and find the sign that says 50 on it. I need proof.
And bonus, what are they called in Thai? What is the districts in Bangkok called in Thai?
The
Extra
sad
bonus,
The
what are
sad
they
moment
called in
is I,
what
I I only remembered the 50 because that was the only bit on the sign that was in English.
bonus question, what are the
Oh.
districts typically called in the rest of the country?
See, I've named off the three biggest versions of them, but I don't know what the smaller one is for like in the cities and towns. Shit. There's soys, there's buries, there's provinces. What's the other one? Shit. Bill, you're gonna have to tell me before my brain fries.
So there are 50 ket. That's
Ket.
specifically for Bangkok. It's like the administrative districts. There's 50 of them. Um, so yeah, and each one has its own unique flavor, and it's a really cool way to explore Bangkok. It really opens up the city quite a bit if you look at it from the 50 ket Hasip ket. And in the rest of the country, this would be analogous to an ampur. So which is like an administrative district for each city and town and
S-
everything. So,
Shows how much I know, huh?
well, there you go. Well, these are the things you'll get to know once you're living in Thailand, because you're either going to be living in Bangkok or in another place. And if you're in Bangkok, you'll be living in a cat. And then if you're living in the rest of the country, you'd be going to an ampur. If for instance, you wanted to get married or you wanted to, register a business, or, there's all this kind of functions that they do. Or if you need like the birth certificate for your kid or something like that, so you'll be going to those offices. So that is the correct trick question. So to be honest, you got it right this time because you did guess the number. You just didn't get the bonuses. So
I'm getting closer to getting full points though.
yeah, I'm gonna go
Half
way.
an answer last week,
I'm gonna
now
go
an
way.
actual point this week.
Yeah, I'm gonna go way harder next week. Don't worry. What are you smoking on, man?
I am smoking on Macmosa,
Macmosa.
which
Okay.
is Miracle Alien cookies crossed with mimosa.
That
Kind of in
sounds
the name,
nice.
but
Is it?
Oh, it's very
like,
nice. It's got those orange terps. If you've ever had Tangy or any of the like Tangy leaning strains like Forbidden Fruit or Tropicana cookies, that kind of stuff.
I've had the old school orange stuff. I don't know if I've had Tropicana cookies. But that does sound nice. I just took some of my good old trusty cannabis oil that I make. Yes, that is what I am. Correct, practically. I'm one of the millennial boomers, pretty much, just like the meme. So, well, one last thing before we get into the episode. We did get a winner from the picture contest from last week. So, yeah, we had a person send in a picture of the most northern point in Thailand.
Which was May Sai. See, I was halfway.
Yes.
I got the May.
Yes, it is in Mae Sai. So we're going to send them an eighth of weed from Thailand. They're in Thailand. They're down in Bangkok. So that's what we're going to do. I don't know how often we can do a contest like this, but at least for this week. So appreciate that person getting in touch. They just identified themselves. I think it was like Johnny B or something like that. I can't remember. But I think that was the person who had emailed us. So I appreciate that, Johnny B. Yeah, we'll be in touch soon with that. So yeah, let's jump into this week's episode. So this week, what we've got for you is a look at, and this isn't going to be a full look at every issue around the laws of cannabis, but this will be a good summary and like kind of like a guide, like a map of how to approach the law in regards to cannabis in Thailand and some of the pitfalls and things to look for, and a brief kind of sketch overview of what's happened so far and what to expect in the future. This isn't going to be a legal advice show, but we are going to be covering the topic as it comes up with people. And we figured we'd do a kind of a first episode that covers the topic. So just to kind of kick that off, most recently, this past week, there was a new law that was signed in by Newton, who's the one of the deputy prime ministers. I forget how many deputy prime ministers there are, but there's a handful. I think there's 4 or 5, maybe 6. I could be wrong there, but there's more than a few deputy prime ministers who are basically right under the prime minister of Thailand, and they all kind of govern and have their own like kind of spheres of influence. Newton is the deputy prime minister and also minister of the health, which has given him a lot of authority around the cannabis issue, and that's why he's advocated for it quite a bit and has put it under the purview of medical usage, and that's why a lot of the discussion is around that. It's because he is the health minister and also deputy prime minister. Now, there are also other kind of actors in the sense of like political actors and who are looking to claw back some of the gains we've made with cannabis and challenge some of the stuff. A lot of it's from opposition parties. Some of it is from the current regime's party, which is interesting. And this is going to be, we'll discuss this a little bit later, but there's going to be more playing out about this here in this next week. But on November 11th, a Newton, under the kind of the consultation of one of the doctors from the medical establishment signed a kind of like an emergency decree. It wasn't necessarily a law passed by the parliament, but like an emergency decree, which added some more stipulations to the cannabis laws, which are being enforced. And again, it's not quite a law. It's almost like an executive action of sorts, where this hasn't passed the parliament. We're still waiting for laws to pass the parliament, but this was sort of an action taken by a Newton that was more or less published immediately in the Royal Gazette. And the big takeaways from this one on November 11th were that if you're going to sell cannabis in a dispensary, you can with proper licenses, but if you're going to have a smoke room or a smoke lounge, the weed will need to be dispensed by a practitioner of Thai medicine, which can be loosely defined as a veterinarian, as a practitioner of traditional Thai medicine, a Thai doctor. So there's a variety of roles or titles within the medical field, from, like I said, even a veterinarian, a traditional Thai medicine, et cetera, or a normal doctor would have to dispense the weed, and then it could be smoked in the lounge. So there are, some changes to that, which did not exist prior to November 11th, along with some new, although this was pretty predictable, aspects of not being able to advertise or market, and everything. So, or cannabis like openly. So, and also not being able to sell through computer networks, which is basically online. So a lot of it resembles a lot of the laws around alcohol, for example. So this was all pretty much expected. So this is just kind of one of those things that has arisen, which leads to the next aspect to this, which is the general kind of problem in which the way information is shared in Thailand, especially with the English-speaking or non-Thai-speaking population of foreigners or expats, and then how this information kind of disseminates out within the country, especially with non-Thai-speaking people. Typically, what happens is the information gets out, but there's usually a delay between when something is released in Thai versus when it's translated and released in English. That's always a problem. There's always going to be a delay just by the very nature of it, which is fine. Sometimes that delay is shorter, sometimes it's longer, but there's always going to be a delay. And then also, and probably more of an impact, is the coverage in the news, which I will name the outlets, the bigger ones, say the Bangkok Post or the Tiger, or
ASEAN Now.
Yeah, Asia Now. These outlets, they don't quite cover it in a way that's as comprehensive as it should be, and or they publish details which are conflicting or outdated. And what happens is this information gets out to a broad scope of people who are mainly following the more traditional media outlets like we had just named. And once that information gets out, and if there's any confusion about it because of imprecise translation or leaving out a key detail, which could totally change the way something is interpreted, or if one aspect is overlooked or kind of buried in a kind of a greater amount of information which doesn't clarify, but then the one clarifying detail is kind of buried in the rest, then what happens is that kind of starts this process of a lot of poor information spreading online, which happens in every society, but it's a issue that's definitely more pronounced in Thailand, and it almost has like a meme like quality to it. And so, these are some of the topics that, like, just to kind of set the tone, like, we want to address. So, like, we want to be a good go-to for information around the law with cannabis, not as a legal advisor in any sense, but to our best ability, interpret what's happening. And to really calm the waters a little bit. I think that's the big goal, because there's a lot of sometimes anxiety when a new thing is being discussed regarding cannabis right now, because there's people who are investing a lot of money. They're kind of staking their livelihood on this, whether they're moving to Thailand or they're investing in a business, or they just want to enjoy cannabis. And it creates a lot of anxiety in the market with businesses and also users. So, our goal is to kind of going to be to calm the waters, discuss things realistically, because it's not all going to be smooth. But also, at the end of the day, there's really a hopeful kind of prognosis with all of this, mainly because Anutin, who is really backing up the push to, keep cannabis in a legal status that's going to be favorable to everybody. So, with all that said, where did you want to start with this, Siththa?
I mean, there's a lot. One thing I want to say
Start from
about
the
like
top.
for like the doctor thing, I'm really glad that it's kind of broadened the aspect of any kind of medical practitioner in Thailand. You said veterinarians and also traditional Thai doctors, which is kind of cool, because I know some like very country like Thais, and there's a few of them that have studied traditional Thai medicine and have their certificates and stuff that are just like, this is a venture I could actually get into. So in a way, like, there's kind of a cool, good thing that's came out of a bad, weird situation. So I give them credit for that. That it's not just like you're a full doctorate, because
Right.
that would be a pain in the ass.
Yeah, to go back to that point, yeah. So when you say a doctor in Thailand, that could mean, a lot of things. That could be, like a pharmacist or someone who is a surgeon or a general practitioner. Typically, those sort of roles and titles are going to take years and years of study, just like it would in most countries. I don't know the specifics on the traditional type medical practitioner, but it is significantly less of a time investment, at least. But it is still a well-regarded title and role, and it does legally fit for what and so, yeah. And even like saying that it was a dark time. See, that's the thing. Like, I wouldn't interpret even, and this is kind of a stickler point, but what happened with that was passed, it created a lot of confusion, but there really shouldn't have been, because a lot of it, I think, should have been expected. And so I wouldn't even say like what's happened so far is necessarily dark so far. I think all of this has been expected. I think it would have been based on what Anutin's background and the rhetoric that's been for the past few years, I think it would have been expected that these types of doctors, broadly defined, would play a role in the commercial side. So I don't think any of this so far is unexpected. I think it's just going according to plan at this point.
Yeah, it's all like that. They're nuisances, but they're ones that are going to be expected with this trade. And I just want to bring up something really cool quite quickly, but I've got the Thai herbal medicine book in front of me by Nefir Jacobson and Pierce Sagalero. And on the beautiful page 123, there is marijuana. So
there you go.
Yeah, gives you internal application, external applications, talks about how that can help with you. And a fun little fact that the Thai word for catnip is gancha mao, which is ganja for cats.
Yes, gancha meow. There we go. Yeah, cat in Thai is meow. So
Which is adorable.
Yes. Cool, man. What else do we got here?
So we've also got the whole online sales thing, which again was to be expected. They're going to treat it the same as they are with alcohol. Thailand like to save face with anything that can be connotated in like a bad thing. So well, you know what I mean when I say bad. We all know what cannabis isn't bad, but people have their prejudices, and the whole online sales thing, one, saves a little bit of face of being like, look, this country's promoting drugs, blah blah blah. Well, they're not, so they want to kind of save face with that. And again, Thailand is very strict and want to look after their kids, so they want to protect any kind of online sales being doctored at ages and stuff like that. You can go to most Thai schools and you'll see like the weed leaf with a red line through it at the front, which is kind of weird in Bangkok, but it's understandable. So I know why they'd do that, but it's annoying for some people, like dispensary owners and stuff, that like were selling and promoting online, and that was like a big kind of main source of income. And I have a few of my farmer friends, they didn't have like a dispensary or anything, and they didn't want a middleman and everything, so they just did orders and stuff, and they can't really do that properly online now, which is a bummer, but again, an understandable bummer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I'm not going to advocate for anything illegal on this podcast just because putting myself out there publicly, but it is Thailand still, and you can do your own research on what's actually happening on the ground, because there will be a large gray market realistically, but that's not something that we necessarily have to promote on this channel per se, but everyone can do their own research. Cool, man. So what else you got for me, man?
So with like all of this said, what do you think is going to come next with some of these rules and restrictions?
What do I think is going to come next? Well, it's a good question. Let's maybe go back to the beginning. When did legalization start?
The good day that a lot of people never thought was going to happen.
Yeah. So it started with medical. Okay. And I'll give you a little background on this if we start from the top here. When did legalization start? It started with the medical process. So the date of that was February 19th, 2019. This is when the Narcotics Act, which had been established for over 40 years, since the 1970s, was amended, and it basically shook up the whole cannabis industry because it was the first country in Asia to legalize medical cannabis,
which is a big thing.
Oh, that's groundbreaking, considering where the laws were prior and the way they were enforced, where you did kind of have to be a bit careful even with cannabis in Thailand prior to that. It could get you in some serious shit. So this really changed quite a bit. So and we're talking about not just hemp, because hemp, or which in Thai is kanchon, and so you have kancha, which is your normal THC cannabis, and then kanchon, which is hemp. Hemp had been approved for basically industrial use since the year prior in 2018. And that pretty much opened up the pathway to THC cannabis in February 2019. And what started happening after this very quickly, and I remember it happening because it started to become kind of well known, but the process was very confusing. But I remember being in on a forum related to Chiang Mai, and a gentleman, a foreigner, had posted about him going to a hospital in Chiang Mai, which is Nakhon Ping Hospital, which is actually where my daughter was born. And it's a government hospital. They did a great job, by the way, with the birth of my daughter, who's a freaking superstar. Literally.
She is adorable.
Yeah. And we won't get into all that, maybe in a later episode, but yeah, so he had gone there at the government hospital, and there was a process to get medicine, basically, cannabis medicine, and that was THC oil. And I was kind of not shocked, but I realized, and like I had sent him a message and asked him to kind of clarify some of the details. I think he was like, you're German or something like that. When, you know, his post was good, but it needed like some clarity in terms of some of the details. So I'd sent him a message and asked him some questions on how he got it and stuff. And yeah, so that was really cool. I ended up going through a different clinic in Chiang Mai. Yeah, so, but now Konping was offering it, which is one of the big government hospitals in Chiang Mai. And it's on the way up to Mae Rim, by the way. If you're ever going up that way, that's the hospital. If you see it, if you're headed north to Mae Rim, it's the one on the left. If you see that hospital ever, if you're familiar with Chiang Mai. And so that was really cool. So, you know, CBD THC and also oil with CBD started to kind of hit the market. What I also started to notice at the time was, you know, you started to see pictures of like cannabis farms, and they were under the direction of either the like Meizhou University in Chiang Mai, which started growing under the kind of direction of the Ministry of Health of the government. And you would see, you know, pictures of that kind of getting online, and you know, Anutin kind of advocating for it. And there was all this kind of buzz around it, and it kind of died down a little bit because it kind of became, you know, normal kind of part of life. Is like, okay, you can get medical cannabis. It's not like everywhere. It's not like every corner, not like every street corner. You had to go through like government approved clinics if you wanted to do it like the fully legal route. There started to be more like products definitely on the market, the kind of black market though. The quality started to increase, I noticed. And there was, you know, definitely something happening. People were starting to make kind of big plays money wise, investing in big grows. There was, you know, you could tell something was happening. There was something on underfoot. And that kind of led to what is the holiday day?
It is the 6th. What is it? 6th of June. Bloody hell! How have I forgotten? It's such a memorable day. 9th of June. Bloody hell! There we go. 9th of June. Was
June
it?
9th. You got it.
I'm American. Wait, no, you're American. I'm English. I say the date first. It's the 9th of June, not the June of 9th. I'm high right now, but I'm pointing that out right now. You Americans are fucking weird with your dates, and it's not my problem.
Oh, this is glorious. Yes, it was that day, the one that Siththa just said. Absolutely.
And again, the day that I say that, again, a lot of people did not think was ever going to happen.
Exactly. A lot of people didn't think it was going to happen.
Especially a lot of westernized people. I mean, a lot of Westerners still don't believe it's happened. That's kind of some of the things, you know, like you were saying earlier, which I kind of want to hear more about, is some of the fake news. I mean, we've like seen some of it in the Discords, how one thing will come out and it's been badly translated, and then everyone freaks out. Yeah, we've got Antoine just telling us not to worry. Meanwhile, motherfuckers over here are like, I'm worrying anyway.
Yes. There's a lot of that anxiety. So yeah, so we've kind of established the background with like the medical side. So when June 9th happened, the most interesting thing about it, and as I can't remember exactly when it was legally going to be delisted, but I think it was months before. It was at least in like February, even like in November of 2021, I believe, because I've seen documents that kind of say both. Because June 9th was not so much of a surprise to everyone. If you were connected, then June 9th was not so much of a big surprise. For 99% of people, though, it was a massive shock. Like, a lot of people woke up or went to bed one day not even thinking about cannabis in Thailand because they weren't even on the medical train. They weren't paying attention. They weren't definitely in the business. You know, the people in the business is a very small percentage of people, you know, maybe 1%, you know, at the time. Then you have some people people medicating and stuff, which is at the time I would say a very small percentage. You have tourists and stuff, which they're usually not really keeping track of stuff like this. But when June 9th happened, to kind of touch on what you're talking about, a lot of people thought it was fake news right off the bat. Yep. I remember the discourse on various social channels, whether it was Facebook or Twitter or Reddit, where the naysayers, who are just the cannabis haters, which there are a lot in the foreigner community.
Oh yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, they, it's usually the Barstool Warriors, the
sipping on their Leos.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all know the ones.
The Chong Commandos. Yeah, 6 a.m. Chong Commando reporting in. They could be easily disregarded, but they thought it was fake news, which I thought was hilarious, because literally one of the most powerful people in Thailand, Anutin, had just pulled off one of the great feats in cannabis history, which was to delist cannabis, THC containing cannabis flower, from the narcotics scheduled list. So that's, at that point it was on and popping, because you could possess, you could sell, you could smoke, as long as it was in a place that was not creating a public nuisance. And it was on. We have not really looked back since June 9th. My reading of the situation is that June 9th pretty much changed the direction for the foreseeable future. And a lot of people thought it was fake news. A lot of people were saying that there was a couple confusing parts to it, which got picked up by the media and got kind of mistranslated and misconstrued. And there was a lot of people who are not familiar with cannabis at all who started to weigh in on the matter. Some with good intent, some not so much. But even the ones with good intent were getting it wrong. For example, the aspect of it being 0.2% for extracts was sometimes being conflated with flower. So then the idea would be, well, 0.2% THC flower would just basically be CBD flower or conchon or hemp flower.
The amount of people I saw that were just blunt, they haven't legalized it or anything. They legalized hemp. You're all stupid. And I'm like, a few months later in Bangkok, smoking on some amazing weed, being like, "Ah, you fucking idiots."
Yeah, and even in doing some of the just cursory research for this podcast, I had come across an article published by NPR, which is like the national public radio in the U.S. Around June 10th, I think it was, or June 11th, so a couple days after the holiday. Which will be memorialized forever as June 9th, saying that, cannabis is not fully legal, and it's only low grade, low potency, 0.2% flower that's legal. And even like major media outlets around the world are getting it wrong. A lot of people, the naysayers, which a lot of them, it's not that they were anti-cannabis, it's just that they were reading what the media was getting wrong. And so there was a lot of confusion in the big media outlets, like we've named already, Bangkok Post, etc., around the issue. The discourse online was just completely wild. But then, you had people like myself and others, and I'm definitely not like a huge activist person, but, just trying to kind of correct the discourse a little bit, and at least get everyone on the same factual level, that, flower was perfectly legal, that extracts and like edibles and stuff had to follow the 0.2% aspect. So this kind of went on for a while. I would say about a month or so, at least within Thailand. I'm sure that the information hasn't really fully probably got out internationally yet, as the way it should, but more or less, at least within Thailand, because people were waiting for people to get arrested for selling weed, and it just wasn't happening. People thought like the police would come and shut down dispensaries. It just wasn't happening. But that doesn't say it wasn't all without issues, right? So that is one thing, is there were some issues that had come up.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so like, what were some of the issues that happened since then? Like, I saw some things online about like dispensaries having to close down, but I didn't really see, like you said, any of that happening.
Right. Okay. So there was some of this happening. Basically about a month after, it was a few weeks after June 9th. So it was either in late June or early July. There was a small scare because since June 9th, there was essentially a full vacuum period. There was nothing in the law, because the laws haven't, now keep in mind, no laws have technically been passed about all this. It's just that cannabis was delisted. But there had to be some like emergency measures taken so that, to basically kind of patch up some of the blind spots. For example, what happened a few weeks after June 9th is there was basically like an emergency measure taken, saying that all the dispensaries could sell, but they wouldn't be able to sell to people under 20, students, pregnant women, or lactating, or women that are lactating. And so on that day, yeah.
I
Go ahead.
mean, I can give quickly the description why it can't be for women lactating, because it's in this book.
Okay.
So where was he? 1, 2, 3. So let's see what it says about marijuana and regarding postpartum nursing mothers. It has been shown to decrease lactation. Being fat soluble, the drug also enters the milk in low dose and is passed on to the infant. So there's two reasons, it can affect your lactation issues, and two, you kind of don't really want to see what happens, just in case some THC gets in your baby.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think these things are very fair. So they needed to at least legally kind of patch this up, where it was like, okay, the laws aren't going to be passed for some time. That's going to be a long, long process. But everyone agreed that like at least some of these things needed to be patched up. So, but because there was such like a low information environment in terms of like being able to trust what information is out there and everything, and just a lot of anxiety in the market, is that when some of these issues came up, a lot of the dispensaries just closed down for like a day, and they weren't sure what the impact of this would be, and it ended up just being exactly what we said. It's just you couldn't sell to people under 20, pregnant, lactating women, etc. But that was one scare that did happen, but it was quickly resolved. Again, referring back to what we were talking about earlier in the episode, there have been recent issues with Anutin, that he signed that kind of emergency measure on November 11th, which again isn't per se like the Parliament passing a law. It's just that if you want to have a smoking lounge, it's going to have to be a doctor. What's interesting is there's a lot of this information hasn't even gotten out to dispensary owners yet. I know of a couple from just my own first-hand experience in Chiang Mai that aren't even aware of this at this point.
I know a few as well, and I'm not going to say names, but
Right.
it happens. Like, it's not just kind of an in English issue. There is also people over in Thailand that maybe do speak and understand Thai that are kind of like not completely up to date.
Right. Because exactly right. Yeah. Now, even exactly right. I mean, you have to follow this stuff very closely. And this actually is, I think, encouraging in a way, because it kind of shows that, at least for now, knock on wood, that the police, as more or less, have stated that this is not an enforcement issue at this point. So there might be legal consequences for people who don't follow this, and you have to make those own decisions as a business owner. But who has been fined or prosecuted for this? I'm not sure. And And I think it's just a fair, not to say to skirt the law. It's just, there's the laws and then there's what is enforced, and that's in any society. And I think it shows too that, as this stuff is getting figured out, it's a very fluid situation. Every business is going to take its own precautions. Every person is going to take their own precautions as regards to the law. But overall, I think it's very favorable still on the ground. So even if you do follow this stuff closely, that's ultimately kind of what's going on. So more or less, there's been a few reports of people getting in trouble and in hotels for smoking. I've seen some people and mainly it's fines. Fines.
Yep.
And so they could go to jail technically, but so far I've only seen fines, and it's only been a few cases, at least I've seen, published in public. And these kind of stories get out pretty quick if it does happen, because people like to talk, especially if they're a tourist or something. They're gonna bring it up. And
I just want to bring up,
yeah.
just as a first-hand account, like when I was in Bangkok again, I was staying in a hotel. And I was nervous about this. I asked around in different services, like, oh, what can I do? Am I allowed to smoke in the room? So I was like, okay, well, seeing as the state of things are, why don't I just ask the hotel? So I did. And I asked them, they said, well, you're in a smoking room, do it on your balcony. The only problems will be if you cause a nuisance and the smell gets like out into the building itself. I mean, I was on the 7th floor, and I don't actually think there was anyone else on my floor anyway. There's the possibility of a fine, but not necessarily from them. It could be someone reporting it in general.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do is ask. Like, a lot of people are kind of quite open to the question, especially in the business mindset of what you're doing, because if you ask, it's going to get rid of the possibility of you just doing it and then there being trouble.
Right.
So I definitely recommend asking if you've got the balls. Ask.
Yeah, and most of the time, I mean, and if you're not at a hotel, if you're at an establishment of some sort, you'll kind of know. I mean, you just feel the room. Read the room. Or if you're outside, and you're out in the woods or the jungle somewhere, you're probably fine. If you're on the beach, most cases you're probably fine. I think we discussed this before. And for people that are in Thailand, this might be obvious stuff, but there's people listening to this, because I saw the stats from our previous episodes. Probably about 40% of people are listening from outside of Thailand. So we try to cater this podcast to both sides here, of people in Thailand and outside of Thailand. So, but yeah, so I mean, for the most part, there's been no issues. So that's up until this point, but then there's some new stuff happening. So far we've been pretty copacetic. Like, more or less nothing has changed since June 9th. The only two things really that have changed after all, I mean, there's been hundreds of articles, so much misinformation, so many naysayers, so many people that have brought FUD to the situation, who are saying, it's all going to go away and blah, blah, blah. So in the past, what has it been now? Over 5.5 months, the only two things that have changed is establishing that people under 20, breastfeeding women and pregnant women and students cannot buy, and you cannot sell to them. And this most recent one on November 11th, which is that if you want to have a smoke lounge, you have to have it dispensed by a doctor. And there's some, aspects about advertising on computer networks, which is online. So really, those are the two main things that have changed over months now, despite all this anxiety and talk and chatter, etc. Okay, two things have changed, and it's really they're very much
kind of level-headed things. They
were very expected.
Yeah,
they were very expected. They were very expected. There was no surprises. Will there be surprises? And what does the future hold? Right? What happens next? That's where we got to think a little bit. So here coming up this next week, so Anutin is a deputy prime minister. There's another deputy prime minister who is under the prime minister. So he's, it's a very powerful position. who will be going to the Narcotic Control Board on November 22nd, Tuesday, to get cannabis rescheduled. Okay, so this is something that some activists like Beard from Sukhumweed, Kitty Chapaka have been more or less trying to bring attention to. They're trying to rally, activists and people whose livelihoods depend on cannabis now, to, come and show their support for, what's basically happened with cannabis so far, and to keep it delisted. But analysis I've read, and you could apply logic to the situation, is that there likely will be no action taken by the Narcotic Control Board, and they'll defer to Newton. I mean, he is the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Health. And, it's very, very likely that nothing will happen here. Newton says not to worry about anything. There's going to be a vote probably in December. There's going to be a bill presented to Parliament. The parliamentary session, just to kind of put some dates in mind, ends on February 28th. So there's going to be vote in the Senate, like the higher house, and then like the lower house, the House of Representatives. There has to be, both these votes. They're going to have to finish all of this in this parliamentary session, which would end the end of February. So we will likely get something at least in a good draft form in December. I think it was the early mid part of December, and then fully finalized at least by the end of February, if not before. But that's kind of the key end date. So sometime between December and February, we're in that time, we're going to learn a lot more about the actual laws that are going to pass.
A lot of people are kind of waiting for that end of February. A lot of, especially people who I've spoken to are outside of Thailand. They've got this worry about business or even just coming over for recreational. They don't want to risk it, which I can understand, but I hope we have clarified a few things about that. But yeah, by the end of February, hopefully we'll kind of have that more solidified understanding instead of being in a fully gray area like we are now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think if you're, 95% of the people listening, if you're listening as just a person who wants to medicate, either, recreationally or otherwise, you're more in line. I mean, you're completely fine. Everything's fine. There's really not going to be major changes. I think even after these points. So if you're hesitating, I wouldn't necessarily hesitate at this point. If you're going to be putting in a lot of money into something, that's a bigger risk, and it might be wise to wait for these things to pass, because there's going to be a lot of details that might be unanticipated. Although the general push and what's kind of happening is, what will likely happen is, the laws around commercial sales on the business side, there's going to be kind of a medical aspect to it, integrated into the law. So again, that's going to be a need for Thai doctors or traditional Thai medicine practitioners to dispense the weed, or being at the dispensary, or to sign off or give you a card of some sort, like they've done in U.S. states. There's going to be restrictions around advertising and marketing, selling online, etc. There's maybe some questions about the kind of the chain of production, and keeping track of who's selling what and where is the source. That's going to be a tough question. I would say there's a big question mark on that. But overall, I would say it's going to be business friendly overall. But the details might get a little murky. And, if you're betting on one aspect of the cannabis business in Thailand, you might want to wait. So yeah. What else? What are some other things we didn't cover here?
I mean, we've covered a lot of the kind of the main breaking changes and what's coming up. I mean, the main kind of thing I want to cover again is I hope people can kind of keep up with the information, the actual information, because, it's kind of tricky. again, before I was actually actively in the community, before I came over, I hardly knew anything. And like with the changes, like you said, with business, like I know a few dispensaries that have had to kind of postpone their opening because they now need to get a doctor because they plan to have a smoke lounge. So I don't know, we've covered a lot of everything, and I just kind of the main thing for me is like, what do you think is the best thing for people to do to keep up to date?
Yeah, I mean, I would always look for the best Thai sources of news first. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like the Thai tabloid press, but there's sources of information, and we can link some in the show notes, for Thai sources of news, which you at least have the original primary source documents and like actual quotes, full quotes from the government leadership, business leadership, etc., as opposed to it playing a game of telephone and going to three different sources, and then all of a sudden you're at the fourth line on the telephone and it's been garbled so much and you miss so many details. Even though you might not speak or read Thai, I would try to focus on primary sources of Thai news, so at least you could potentially use a tool like Google Translate, or at least have access to primary source documents, as opposed to just going to the Bangkok Post or Asian Now or Facebook group chatter. It's always going to be better. Now, it takes a little bit more work. So if you're a person who's in the business, it might be worth your while to do that. If you're just coming to Thailand for 2 weeks to hang out at the islands and smoke some joints, it's not going to be that big of a deal. You're more or less in the clear. You're going to be fine. But if you're in business, definitely try to follow sources where you can get primary source documents. Get into the Cannabis Thailand Discord server. There's a lot of discourse there that happens, which clarifies a lot of these issues, because it's kind of like a real-time place where once something is released in Thai, it's typically posted there very quickly within minutes, and we can sort out the details in a way to more or less understand it. There are Thai speakers in there. Also, your local authorities, which issue licenses, they're going to give you the best on-the-ground advice. So that's what I would do if I was going to be getting into the business of cannabis in Thailand, which I am. More on that in future episodes.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, it's a little foreshadowing here. But yeah, I mean, at this point, no one's getting arrested for any of this stuff. A lot of money is being invested. The momentum is on our side. Newton says, don't worry. I think as far as what we can do here on this podcast, and I've talked a lot on this episode, so you've gotten a lot more of me on this one than Siththa, is every time there's any changes, because we're going to be doing this weekly, if there's any major changes, we're going to be here for you as at least a resource to at least bring some clarity to the situation. We'll at least discuss it and bring it up. If we're not sure, we'll say. And we're not going to try to, yeah.
We're in the trade and stuff as well, like you said, bringing up business. So we want to share this because, one, we're actively doing it and having to learn about it, and it just helps everyone out. So, and we like talking about it. It's kind of interesting what's going on. So I like to think that we are going to be a pretty good source to help people understand things and keep up to date with what's going on for those who are like on the pulse in Thai media and stuff.
Right. Exactly. So, and it's not going to, have to dominate every episode, but if there are major changes, we'll bring it up at least in a segment of the show. And, but overall, I would say everything's still very positive. There's been only two minor changes since June 9th. They were all very predictable, realistic, level-headed things, like you said, Siththa. And, at this point, it looks like everything's going to be, as expected. If there are major changes, we'll cover them. Anything can happen. I mean, this is Thailand still at the end of the day, but, we don't anticipate anything going too pear-shaped, as they say. So that's at least my take.
No, I 100% agree. I think everything's kind of on the way up. The kind of restrictions are just to be expected. It's going to go the same route as any country has kind of gone with legalizing cannabis. There'll be like little hiccups and stuff like the whole doctor thing along the road, but there's no turning back now. We've fired off pretty hard and there's no turning back, in my opinion. I'm just excited. There's things to worry about, but they're just pessimistic worries. And there's my alarm. But yeah, I'm positive. I'm very positive what's to come.
Okay. Well, that's what we'll end it with. Cool. Yeah, well, good stuff, Siththa. It's been good talking to you about this. Yeah, next week we've maybe got a surprise coming to everyone. We'll keep you updated if there's any surprises on the law side. But the surprise we're talking about is possibly a guest. Possibly.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, so it could be an exciting. We'll let you know. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and we're gonna have a Facebook thing going. We're gonna have an email list here, so just keep in touch with us. If you have any questions or about anything we discussed in this episode, send us an email, Siam Smoke Sessions at gmail.com. I'll be glad to field them. And then that's all I've got.
Stop worrying.